Today, we are with Noah Revoy. He is a love, life, and relationship coach in Portugal. He is speaking in Orlando at an upcoming conference called 22 Convention for Women. Today, we will discuss with him some of the issues he sees with feminism. Hi, Noah.
Hi, thank you for interviewing me.
What is the nature of the feminist propaganda which dominates our culture?
Well, right now, women are being defrauded, bullied, tricked, shamed, and pressured into following a narrative that's left millions unhappy and unfulfilled. This because women are being sold a big lie. It's the feminist lie. And it's really the biggest lie that women have been sold since the one that they bought from the snake in the Garden of Eden. You know, it's a pretty all-encompassing set of propaganda from government to the schooling system. It's promoted by businesses and entertainment industry, and it's especially a problem at the level of the interactions between women, where there's a lot of social pressure, and women are a little more susceptible to social pressure than men. And there's a lot of bullying and pressure on women to follow a certain narrative, and very often from women who themselves are unhappy following that narrative.
Interesting. Well, while feminists claim that men dominate and control women, do not feminists seek to do the same then?
Yes, and it's interesting. I think the focus on men dominating women is a red herring. It's designed to distract women from the people who are dominating them. So it's not all men seeking to manipulate women. Of course, there's men that seek to manipulate women, and not all women manipulate women as well. But there are certain groups trying to manipulate everyone, and women are one of the groups that are really targeted for manipulation, especially by feminists. They're doing this, the thing that they complain about, and complaining about men doing it, is a way to distract, to keep women looking at one direction while they're tricking them in another direction.
Well, why, in your opinion, do feminists seek this sort of power over women?
There's a few different reasons, but one of the big ones is that having power over people and getting attention from people, feminists are very big into getting attention. We see this from them, for example, disturbing Bernie Sanders rallies. They come there just to get attention. That's all. They want more people to pay attention to them. And you get a big dopamine hit when people pay attention to you. You get a big dopamine hit when you have power over people. And for some people, this is as addictive as hard drugs. And it starts off small, and it snowballs, and they realize that a certain set of behaviors will get them a lot of power and attention. And you add that with perhaps some narcissism, some psychopathy, some borderline personality disorder issues, and you have people who will get attention at any cost, no matter who it hurts.
How do feminists go about manipulating women?
Well, there's basically three ways that we can get things. So there is the reciprocal way. We can trade. You have something I want, I have something you want. We work out something where we both benefit. There is what some people call the masculine, I'm bigger than you and stronger than you, I can take it way. And then there is that will be the physical super predator way. And there is I'm going to shame you and guilt you into giving it to me way. And that's generally thought of as more of a feminine way, although men use that as well in some cases. Some men do. And that's the social, psychological super predator way of getting things. And for feminists, they don't have necessarily anything to give to get the reciprocal way, or they don't want to because it's more difficult. You have to actually provide value to other people. And they're not physically capable of taking what they want, so they're using the shaming way, and they get a lot out of that. There is a lot of power to be had in controlling societal shame and controlling societal guilt. It's an entire industry.
Interesting. How do women bully other women into embracing feminism?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I was thinking about answering this question, I was reminded of the book 1984. There is in 1984, the government, the the authoritarian, totalitarian government, they have this thing where it's called doublespeak. And so, 2 + 2 = 5. And there's a reason that they want people on very small, 2 + 2 = 5. That's not important when it comes to deciding right and wrong. But if you can get people to compromise in these small issues, it breaks down their mind. It makes them manipulatable, and it makes it easy to control them. And to a large extent, the bullying is often about very small things. Women know about this more. Women bully women far more than they bully men. I know a lot of men, they're unhappy with the bullying that comes from women, with the manipulation, but they're much more likely, just as men are more likely to be victims of violence from men, women are more likely to be victims of psychological manipulation from other women. And it starts on small things. It starts with disapproval through looks, cutting people out of their social circles in order to manipulate them, but only letting them back in when they do what they want. Typical mean girl behavior. And this ends up being, it can really snowball. There are women that kill themselves because they're bullied by their workmates, not necessarily feminists, but women will use that power as well to promote feminism, because it gives them a kind of an excuse to bully. If you bully someone because you just want to bully them, well, that's not really societally acceptable. But if you bully them because they're against feminism, now you have an excuse. It's societally acceptable.
What are some of the control phrases you've seen feminists use to keep women in line?
Yes, I've seen some really, really vile, disgusting stuff. I won't get into too much of it because I don't think it's worth repeating. But sexual innuendo, degrading comments about their mental capacity, their sexuality, their appearance. Some of I've seen it happen, and I've had women tell me about it, that feminists told them specifically, "I wish you would be raped, so then you would support feminism." For some reason, there was a connection there, they felt. And this is
Wow.
not one woman. I've had dozens of women tell me this.
Wow.
Terrible, terrible things. And I tell this to men, and they're a little shocked, unless they've seen this kind of interaction online, that women would treat each other that badly. It's really quite terrible. It's really a play on women's fears and insecurities. So some of the very specific phrases that I hear over and over again, like, "Did your shipment of male attention arrive?" What a pick-me bitch, they'll call them. What that means is that supposedly the target of that harassment wants male attention, and therefore she wants to be picked. She wants to be accepted by men, and that's the only reason why she's not hating on men like her feminist peers. And women will be accused of either internalized or unconscious misogyny, which is hate against women. They'll be told they're a gender traitor. Can you imagine if there was a big group of people running around calling people race traitors? How that would be viewed and attacked in mainstream media. But feminists very often publicly call women gender traitors when they don't,
Wow.
when they're not feminists. It's truly there's a lot of hate going on there. So they'll tell women, if you've got a baby, they'll say, "Oh, men just see you as a baby factory. You're nothing but a baby factory because you got a child. You're brainwashed." Or they'll attack them, say they look ugly, old, fat, and usually, almost always, I've found the person that says the other person is fat is the one that is the fattest of the group. So it's a deflection. It's a trick. Look over there, don't look over here. One of the really common things is that they will denigrate more traditionally minded women for not being sexually promiscuous. They'll turn what used to be a widely understood societal negative, promiscuity, and they'll turn it into a virtue somehow, and they'll criticize women who aren't like that.
They criticize the virtuous.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a lot about making excuses. A lot of feminism is about wanting to have an excuse for bad behavior. And nowadays, since they made The Handmaid's Tale into a movie, now you get Handmaid's Tale references constantly. I think they're so into it. I'm not sure why they're so into it, but I think it has something to do with the fact that they actually would like a man to pay as much attention to them, even if it was negative, because their bigger problem is they get no attention, not that they get unhealthy attention. They'd rather some attention than no attention. But yeah, they'll call them brainwashed. They'll make fun of them for being married. And something I've noticed that I only really found out about in the last couple of years, there's a lot of hatred against Christians, white people, straight people, and even minorities who go against the narrative get attacked a lot more than they would, attacked in ways that would be not politically correct if they weren't supporting traditional lifestyles. I often will see the image of the person that is making a hateful remark, for example, on my Twitter. Click on there, and a large portion of the time, I once for 2 days kept track of it, 30% of them were Satanists.
Wow.
Yeah, a very large portion. That's the ones that was obvious. They would say it in their profile. Maybe there was more that weren't, but and when I'm counting witches and others in that group, even though that might not be technically correct. But yeah, there's a lot of hatred towards anyone that would have been considered a normal member of society 100 years ago.
Right, right. Well, feminism now dominates Western corporate culture and the media. And what examples have you seen of that?
Well, there's been a lot of reporting about trad, they'll call it trad, short for traditional. It's women who want to be stay-at-home mothers. Some of them have aesthetic choices that look more like the 1950s, but not necessarily. But the main thing is they want to be stay-at-home mothers. They want to have children. They want to take care of their husband. You know, they have a very delineated difference between the gender roles between the husband and wife. And there's been a couple of hundred reports in the last year about this. Not a single one of them was positive. They're all about how women are being, you know, this is some sort of disturbing trend, and they try to link it with racism. They try to link it with violence and all kinds of stuff, and spousal abuse and things which have no connection to it, just to make it seem dirty. They're trying to connect it with any dirty thing that they can, and it's really a big it's a global smear campaign because it's coming out of everywhere in the Anglosphere. And I will say it's mostly the Anglosphere where you see this. More so even than, you know, you don't see this happening to the same extent, say, in Eastern Europe, because ideas spread very easily when we all have this unique language that we share. The ideas can really spread quickly. But you also see a lot of anti-family. You see marketing from companies that's anti-family.
Oh, tell me about that.
Well, I've seen there was one. What was it? It was a travel company, and they were talking about how much nicer it is that you can travel, but your friends with kids can't, and how lucky you are for that.
Oh.
You know, and promoting, because you know you promote feminism and you denigrate the family because the two things are not really compatible, and this way you push people over to the one side, even if you're not directly promoting it. Almost every single company that is a public company in the world has an officer of diversity, which is largely connected with ensuring that feminist goals are met within the company.
I've been noticing that too.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very interesting. How do you, obviously you counsel a lot of men and women on relationships and love, and how do you recommend women break free of this dominant feminist mindset that's so pervasive? It's just so overwhelming all of our cultures. You're from Portugal, and you're talking about Europe, but it's happening here in the US. What is your advice?
It's a little bit like quitting smoking. So if you want to quit smoking, you know smoking's bad for you. It won't kill you right now. Makes you less attractive, and you know, it makes you cool to other smokers, but detestable to everyone else. You know, because nobody wants to smell the smoke and stuff.
Right.
So if you want to quit smoking, the first thing you do is you stop hanging around with smokers, because it's really, really hard if you're a smoker. and all your friends are smokers and they all go out for a cigarette and you're left alone. So don't hang around with people that are promoting feminism if you find that you're in that mindset too easily. And hang around with people can include watching television programs that are written from a feminist mindset, or movies or whatnot, because in a way you're kind of associating with that person. It's a very one-way association. You're not influencing them, but they are influencing you. Be careful what kind of entertainment you take in. Right now, it seems almost every single movie that comes out is either a remake of a movie starring men, but now starring women, or a movie where some pretty nasty women do very nasty things to very horrible men. And, go buy a book. Take the $20 you would have spent on seeing a movie and go buy a book that was written before, like at least 75 years ago, and read it. You're going to get a lot more out of it. You're going to have a lot better time. You're going to be exposed to a culture. We can expose ourselves to cultures from the past by reading books written during those time periods. That's going to help us to undo some of this propaganda that we've been exposed to. The other thing is to avoid things that trigger that feminist thinking in our mind. Cycles of thinking. We'll get used to having a certain cycle of thinking. We will see something and it will bother us, and we will overgeneralize. Men and women do this. So women will say, all men are X. Instead, we need to start changing our language. The men I know are like this. People talk about feminist women, and honestly, I didn't know any of them until I got into coaching. And even then, it's not that my clients are feminists. Some of them are recovering feminists, or are influenced by feminist ideas. But the way I've conducted my life, I don't have feminists in my life. They're just not around me, and they're not around my wife. If I had daughters, they wouldn't be around my daughters. So for my daughters, it would be a foreign idea. It would be strange to them. And then once it's at that point, you can hear some of that propaganda and it doesn't affect you. In fact, it might push you more the other way, which is happening with a lot of young people now. A lot of young people are rejecting the feminist ideas. And the issue is what will they take instead? And I think that's where you and where myself and others are responsible for ensuring that information is out there for people to have that alternative. The other thing, the last thing and the most important thing is to cultivate within us a love for men, for women to do that if they're trying to get over feminism. Cultivate within themselves a love for the masculine. A lot of women who are feminists, they were abused either directly or by neglect. They didn't have a good man in their life growing up, and they have resentment towards men. Maybe they saw their father was a shiftless bum, or maybe he was simply emasculated by the mother and they wished that he would have stood up to her, or he would have taken a lead, or been more of a man. And they have to recognize that that frame of seeing men that way is unhealthy, and start to go out and look for better men to be in their life. And that might start as simple as reading about the things that men do to keep society running, and thinking in our mind, cultivating that mindset of, I'm very thankful that the garbage gets collected by 98% men. I'm very happy that our country hasn't been invaded lately, since there's a whole bunch of men with guns standing on the border, and these type of things. It is important to cultivate positive emotions in order to fight against the negative emotions that feminism brings up for women about men.
Excellent advice. Now, at the upcoming 22 convention in Orlando, May 1st through 3rd, 2020, you're going to be speaking on feminine agency. So what is agency?
Agency is our ability to identify and act upon threats and opportunities. So basically to comprehend the world that is around us accurately, and then to take actions that we want to take to operate in the world. And most people are either have a deficiency in one or the other of those things. They don't have an accurate view of the world, or they have difficulty acting on the things that they know are true. Developing your agency will help you on both of those areas. It's a mental process, and you need to strengthen your mental and emotional abilities in order to control yourself. You might think of it like an elephant, and on top of our mind is like an elephant, and on top is our consciousness, like a little rider on that elephant. Now, if you're riding an elephant, you can't make that elephant do anything it doesn't want to do. You have to be very smart. You have to understand the nature of the elephant, and you have to give it just the right incentives and have the right relationship with that elephant in order to get it to go where you want. And our mind is very much like that. We can't force ourselves to do things we can do it in the short term, but not in the long term. We can't be tyrants to ourselves. We have to understand our own nature. We have to understand how to avoid situations and people and things that cause us to behave in ways we don't want to behave. Good example, if you want to get healthy, you want to eat right. If you have a lot of junk food at home, most people cannot not eat the junk food. And so a simple thing to do is don't buy it, don't have it in your house. Having agency to a large extent is knowing where our limits are, but working with what we've got. Everyone has limits, and we need to learn how to work with those. So I actually do a course on agency, and I'm about to launch I have been doing what I call the alpha version. I'm about to launch the full final version now, and it's really changing people's lives. I have clients that were 100 pounds or more overweight a couple of years ago. They started coaching with me, sending me photos now of them nice and fit. Wow. I have clients that were completely demotivated to do anything with their life. And now they're running a business, they're happy, they're dating, they're healthy. I have a client that came to me, everything was wrong in her life. It's been about a year and a half, maybe 2 years since she started working with me. And almost all of her progress was in the first year. Most of the coaching was in the first year. Now she's married, she's pregnant, she's healthy, she's happy. All of her addictions are gone. Her entire life is better. Now I can only coach a few people at a time. It's very time consuming. So I've created courses and agencies so that I can help many more people in the world. And even hopefully other coaches can use the information with their clients as well.
Excellent. So it sounds like agency is a lot about making better decisions.
Yes, that's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
Now, if a woman grows her agency, how does that help her romantic relationships, let's say?
Well, a lot of people are afraid when entering into a relationship, not of entering into it, but of leaving it. They're not afraid of the beginning, they're afraid of the end. But the end is created by the beginning. So most divorces are, the cause of most divorces are sown in the early stages of dating. So mistakes that people make either in the selection of a person to date and then to marry, or in the way that they approach the relationship. And very often, once a relationship gets into a certain pattern, it's, if you're married, I'll work with you to fix that pattern. But if you're not already married, sometimes it's better just to separate and start again with a new person, because certain patterns are very hard to break. If a woman gets with a man that she does not respect and she's dating him and they're moving towards marriage, it's very hard for that man to ever win the respect back. And it's very hard she can't just make herself respect him. Having agencies, understanding that we have limits as well, and we need to work within the nature, human nature. But it's going to change a lot about how she approaches the dating scene in general. It's going to protect her heart. It's going to help her to be, people are very concerned about the negative effects of sexual promiscuity on women, but emotional promiscuity is nearly as destructive. That means falling in love too easily and not being careful with our heart can be very destructive, very painful for men and women. And having agency gives you some control over your emotions. It allows you to fall in love when you want to fall in love with the kind of person you want to fall in love with. And that's really, that's the key to having a marriage that lasts until death do us part.
Thank you for that. Is agency different than setting boundaries?
If you look at agency as a group, setting boundaries is part of it. So it's definitely within agency. The difficulty is that there are people who can set boundaries, but because they don't have enough understanding of themselves or the world around them or human nature, the boundaries they set aren't adequate, or they're unable to maintain them. So if you have agency, you'll understand what kind of boundaries you need to set and how to maintain them. A great example could be if you've decided that you don't want to have sex before marriage, and you set that as a boundary, but you're alone with the person you're dating who you're very attracted to, and you're going almost all the way to sex, eventually you're going to end up having sex with them. So if that's a boundary you set for yourself, having agency understands that there's a cascade effect, and there's going to have to be a limit upstream somewhere where you cut off the behavior in order to not get to a place you don't want to be in. And that's just one of many examples.
Okay. Now, can agency help your life in other areas besides relationships?
Yes, absolutely. It really helps in your health. In 2020, anyone in the West who is not suffering from some chronic health problem can have excellent health. We have access to medical care that we couldn't have dreamed about 30 years ago. Medical care in the poorest part of Africa is as good as it was in the best, most wealthy neighborhoods in America in the 1970s. So medical care has come a long way, and it's got a lot. Despite the medical care cost issues, the actual cost of delivering the care is pretty low. It's expensive for other reasons. We can afford to eat. We're one of the first, the last 100 and something years is the first groups of people that could afford to eat as much as they want of just about anything. And we're no longer so constrained by these things. Now, some of the constraints we used to have actually kept us healthy. I remember my great-grandparents talking about being stuck inside in the winter in Canada for sometimes 3 or 4 months during blizzards and snowstorms and in the prairies. And you ate whatever was in the house, and there was nothing else to eat. And if you ran out, you were hungry for a few weeks. And nobody was fat back then because you had obligated forced fasting at certain parts of the year. Nowadays, we can eat until we die, and no one will stop us. And unfortunately, we used to have some social pressure not to do that. And now we have, as an adjunct to the feminist movement, we have the fat body positivity movement and things like that, that have taken away that positive peer pressure to remain healthy. And so having agency is going to give us the power to manage our lives in such a way so as to be healthy. Other things that I found a lot of clients benefit very rapidly from is learning how to manage their time. If you have agency, you recognize that losing your life 1 minute at a time is almost as bad as completely losing it. If you die 10 years younger or waste 10 years of your life when you're young, you're better off to die 10 years younger, because the time when you're young is more valuable. If you're young, there's things you should be doing. You should be managing your time. There are things which will greatly benefit you in a few years that you can do now that are very simple. So when you have agency, you have the power to make yourself do those things. Most people have problems in their life because of a series of bad decisions. Not always their bad decisions. Might be someone else. They inherited some trauma, some trouble from other people, from their parents or whatever, or society. However, at this point, they're responsible for themselves, and their good decisions will build the best life that they can have.
I see. Okay. Now, back to feminism. If you are operating with a greater degree of agency in your life, does that mean that you'll automatically be lessening the hold feminism has on you if you're a woman trying to break free of that?
One of the most common, there are reasons for feminism at the higher levels to control people, but the actual reason that most feminists are feminist has to do with the fact that it's an excellent excuse for bad behavior. It's a socially acceptable excuse for bad behavior. It's an excuse to be out of control, to hate things and hate other people, and it's an excuse to not build a family, for example. And it's an excuse why you shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that, or the positivity movement that's connected with it. It's an excuse why you don't need to exercise and why you should overeat. But when you have agency, excuses don't mix well with your new mindset. You actually start to feel uncomfortable by the idea of making excuses for yourself. And it makes it much easier to have that level of self-control and self-discipline. There is for a reason the meme that feminists have a certain physiognomy. They tend to appear a certain way. And you've probably seen those, comparisons, feminist women, non-feminist women, and the feminist women are ugly and the non-feminist women are beautiful. These are often women that you can see sometimes women who became feminist. And I've had clients like that. They're beautiful young girls, go to college, become feminist, look very odd until they reject feminism, and then they become beautiful again. Once you have rejected feminism because you have made certain changes in your life and you've made yourself healthy and fit and happy, you're not interested anymore. You don't want excuses. And you start to want to create a life for yourself. And for the vast majority of women, that means a husband and children. Most women want to marry and have children.
It strikes me that embracing feminism is a good excuse if you feel like you're not succeeding in relationships with men, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And men do the same thing. There are men who say, I can't succeed with women. It's all women's fault. It's because all women are feminists. It's because women are this, women are that. They're all horrible. And there are men and women that facilitate that kind of attitude and behavior in men. And there are ones that facilitate the converse in women. And when you are happy and successful, you are not generally attracted to radical ideologies. That's usually, you go to either end of any scale of radical ideologies and you find unhappy people.
Interesting. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of your talk at Convention 22 or 22 Convention. So I guess you'll be sharing that information, how people can register for the conference when you post the video.
Yes,
Thank you
it'll
very
be
much,
down
Noah.
underneath the video in the description.
Okay, super. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much.
Thank you.